we want to go over our takeaways for today, Cradle to Career. We'll talk about what to do when you first get a diagnosis. We'll talk about some protective factors, some things you can do to help your family be stronger in the long term and get through difficult times. We'll also learn how to maintain high expectations for our children, how to overcome the overwhelm when thinking of the future. We'll do an introduction to person-centered thinking, and what that is. And also we'll discuss self-determination skills, how to help the little ones from an early age with their self-determination. So those are our takeaways for today. And we'll start with today with my personal story. This is mine. This is my kiddo. This is kind of where I am in the path from his cradle to early years and working towards the future and his career. So I'm 15 years into this journey of disability parenting, and looking into the future continues to be overwhelming. It does. So with today's topic, you may also be already feeling like, wait a minute, there's a lot to think about, right? I still have a young child, but it may be overwhelming, because it is, right? It is overwhelming to think about our kids growing older, becoming independent, moving out, having a career, what that looks like. And so it's, even for our neurotypical kids, it may be overwhelming, but so let alone for our kids with needs that we understand. So today we'll sit together through this. So there's overwhelm to start with, and we'll shine a light on that path ahead, right? With many tips and tools that will help us get through this together. So as you can see in the pictures, I have a boy. He's on the autism spectrum, identified before 3. And how did this start for us? It was hard. Yeah, it was hard to notice delays. My husband and I panicked, of course, in the early years. We felt really lost, and decided that, we came to a point where we needed to reach out for help. And that was very helpful to kind of realize that we were stuck, and finding help out there was very, very helpful. So we, it's normal. We had disagreements, and thinking about our son's potential seemed like really difficult, but we still do sometimes struggle with just letting go as families. But what we have learned is that being prepared is very helpful. Being prepared is so very helpful, and we cannot rush sometimes things. We cannot rush. So and some things we cannot fix. So our son is his own individual self, and he lets us know it very often. And we need to take some steps back ourselves to listen and observe and focus as much as possible on the things that we can control, right? Focus on his strengths and what is important to him, so we can make it to the next step. So when things is hard, this is what we remind ourselves: one step at a time. That's kind of our saying in our small family, right? Sometimes very small steps, and that's okay. My son will very likely make his own decisions very soon. Also a little scary, but as parents, we, of course, we want to be there. We want to give ideas. We usually want to make things better and fix things, but we understand that letting go is going to be needed. And what we can do is embrace the moments, see emotions, straight in the eye, so we can get through them, and one step at a time, right? So we're not alone. I want you all to know that you're not alone. And I'd like to show you, to start with our topic. So this was kind of my story, my path, and there's transitions at every step of the way, different steps of the way, that being prepared for is really helpful, especially in having our children grow stronger to be independent. So we want to show another story of another mom. She explains it very well, especially about those first moments, the first years that are kind of hard to get through when you get the first diagnosis. So let me know if the sound is okay.
the most important thing that I learned on very early on is that what I was experiencing emotionally was grief, that I was truly grieving. It was helpful that I was involved in parent support early on because I learned some very basic things from a wonderful psychologist named Ken Moses. And what he said was that truly struck me is that parents build core level dreams for who their child is going to be for them. I mean, what we dream our children are going to do and be is not realistic because they're going to do whatever they're going to do. But, who they are going to be for us. I was short. I married a tall man. I wanted a child who was going to play volleyball and she was going to have long fingers. And I was hoping she'd be a redhead. And I had a daughter and she was a redhead. And at 5 weeks, she stopped breathing and suffered massive brain damage and had cerebral palsy and was blind and nonverbal. And she was going to use a wheelchair forever. And that was my first huge grief, was letting go of that dream that my daughter would play volleyball and I would teach her how to play volleyball. Another important thing Ken Moses said was, we have to let go. We grieve the dream that was lost. And we grieve that by letting it go and building new dreams, new hopes, based more on what our child truly is, and holding on to those dreams and being flexible in those dreams as they grow. He had hope for us. He enabled me to have hope for what Jessica might be after the surgery, or in a year, or in 10 years. And so I kept rebuilding new dreams based on how she was doing, whether she regressed, whether we moved forward. She didn't have vision. Oh, maybe she does have some vision. Oh, she definitely has some vision. And so your hopes and your dreams and your expectations continue to grow as they do. And I think that's my best story to share, is that don't give up on your hopes.
So she says it very nicely, right? It's a really nice story. And it just tells us how our reactions are so very normal, right? To feel sad, to feel grief, and to feel hopeless, right? But hope is out there, and those emotions are normal. And actually, our great Trudy Grable, who used to work at PHP, used to say this, that if we weren't having these reactions, we should, I would worry about you, right? Because our emotions are normal. But looking ahead and having some support, right, will give us some hope, and we should not give up our dreams, right? There's still a lot that we could do, and move ahead one step at a time. So that brings us to how, which is what helps us move forward with our emotions, would be kind of our first step. The video always wants to look again. And so I want to talk to you about the 4 stages of adaptation from Nobody's Perfect, Living and Growing with Children Who Have Special Needs by Nancy Miller. So this is a pilot she's from a pilot parent family resource center, the ARC of California. And so this book explains how everyone passes through these periods in their own way and at their own time. So we all grieve differently, and there's no right way to adapt, right? So the task in each stage may overlap, as you see in the circle, and the stages are not really linear, right? They have more of a circular and kind of spiral quality. So in order to review them, or they've numbered them 1 to 4, being number 1, surviving. And so we all go through the stage of surviving at times, which is what we do to keep going, right? When we're feeling completely overwhelmed because, something totally out of our control at that moment has taken away our child, in our case, our child's equal chance at life, right? And so what we can control is what helps easing the survive process, and it's understanding, right? Our feelings are normal, right? Making time for ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and creating and using a support system. So being in a state of survival, this author says, doesn't last forever, which is the good news. It seems that way, but it doesn't. And so the next stage would be searching. that is with a number 2 here. And this is what we do when we're looking for answers for our child, right? We're desperate, we're frantic. It is tiring, right? It's a tiring stage. We don't know where to find strength sometimes, but we do, and we find ourselves on a mission, right? And you'll probably have periods of searching during your whole life with our child. And there are 2 kinds of searching that this author mentions: the outer searching, which is when we look for a diagnosis, understanding, services, right? And then there's the inner searching as well, which is trying to find our identity as parents of a child with special needs, right? The next is settling in, which is what we do when, when that rapid pace of searching kind of lets down. We begin to choose our battles and balance things in our family, in our lives, our child's schedule. Things kind of start finding their place. And it's when not only the outer searching has kind of subsided for a while, but also, and more importantly, our attitude about the situation kind of settles a little bit as well, right? So we start settling in. And then, oh, I think I numbered them wrong. I'm sorry. Separating is number 4. They're, like I said, they're circular, right? We may go back sometimes and have different stages as our child grows and transitions. But the next stage is separating, which is what you do as a normal gradual process, and it happens in small steps throughout childhood, right? Our children become a little more independent as possible as they can. And so when a child has special needs, this being independence may need to be a little different or maybe slowed down, right? But it's possible. And we may need extra parenting as well. And we may have to initiate separation. It may not happen naturally, but we need to plan for it, right? To make it happen. So letting go, I guess, is what separating means. Letting go on our part is also going to be necessary, right? That we're ready. So we're not alone in all these stages. Again, there's support along the way, and many agencies and professionals who can be there for us, parents who have traveled this path and can show us some light in their experience. So these 4 stages that are more personal, I would like to also share another research-informed approach that has shown to help increase family strength. Also helps with child development, and many agencies are using it to support and reduce the likelihood, of child abuse and neglect. And so this approach is based on the Engaging Families program and communities from called the 5 protective factors. And here they are. The 5 protective factors for families are social connections, resilience, knowledge, communication, and support. So social connections are going to be very important, right? We all need friends, positive connections, trusted connections, and having a support system, right? So like I remember when my kiddo was young, it was the most surprising person who I felt connected to. It wasn't my direct family. It was a friend who was, more understanding. And when things got difficult, knowing that I had some connections out there was very, very helpful. So we all need, and we need to push ourselves sometimes to socialize and to connect. But once we do it, we usually feel better when it's a positive social connection. So keeping that up for ourselves and for our family and our children will help our families grow and stay strong. Resilience is the ability to bounce back, right? When we go through difficulty, right? It's that ability to be strong and firm, but also flexible when needed. And, finding balance in stressful times, bouncing back from adversity. Knowledge is directed towards learning, right? That it's a constant learning that we need to keep up with. Learning about parenting is important. Learning about our child's development, the stages, the typical stages of development for children to help us keep our expectations real and also high, because we don't look, we're not born learning how to parent. Part of it may be natural, but part of it is also learned, right? And it's a continuous process. The other factor is communication, and this has much to do with social and emotional development of our children. Having good communication, modeling, emotional regulation, giving positive feedback, having a positive environment, right? Helping with positive behavior supports, right? Will create those safe spaces for our whole family to grow together and have stronger social and emotional skills, right? For all of us. And then there's support, which is that concrete support that we all need at times. We all get to that point, and it's okay to ask for help. And that's what this protective factor is, that finding support when needed is a strength, right? Getting help, and everybody needs it at times. So it's okay to ask for help and to look for some reliable sources, trusted sources of information, and community agencies that have quality and evidence-based interventions that can help us move forward when we get a little stuck. So practicing those protective factors are really going to be helpful to have our family be strong and move ahead. So next, I'm going to transition to Luisa. She's going to talk about the ability to adapt and practice the factors and what's next. So Luisa.
Thank you so much, Susanna. That was great information. And as Susanna mentioned, as parents, we're used to protecting our children. And obviously, that's what we want to continue to do. We seek the best for them. And sometimes, we can protect to such a degree that we do not allow them to reach their potential. And that is why we have this slide. We always want to keep protecting, but we also want to get into that potential mode. Now, what can we do in such case? Well, the following suggestions that you see here may help. Setting and achieving high expectations. Stephen Covey coined the phrase, begin with the end in mind. The end in this case is our children living as happily and independently as possible, given their unique abilities and challenges. Our expectations may include them advocating for themselves, taking care of their own needs, engaging in productive work, and participating fully in day-to-day activities. So that is something that we want to strive for as parents. Now, something else that's important is not allowing others get us down. As parents, many of us have heard discouraging evaluations of our children's potential from doctors, therapists, and teachers. And we may also experience, a lack of support from family members and friends as they hint that we should lower our expectations. And we know that their intentions may be the best. However, remember that you know your child best. So we never want to allow others to get us down, to get our hopes down, and even more important, to get us out of those high expectations. Now, something else very important is learning to teach, or learn how to teach your child. Children with special needs can learn almost any skill with the right support. As parents who interact with their children day in and day out, we need to know how to teach. How can we break those skills down into smaller, teachable parts? Maybe changing the environment, using visuals to support learning, modeling, prompting, and gradually, shaping those skills and providing the reinforcement and correction when needed. We know that this sounds, a lot easier said than done, but when we make the efforts and we see the positive results, we know that giving up is not an option for us, which takes us to the next suggestion. Avoid giving in and giving up. Maintaining high expectations and supporting our children's learning every day is tough. It's much easier to do things for our children than to teach them to do things for themselves. And it is much easier to give in to demands and let our children do what they want. For example, allowing them to play hours of video games. And that may be easier at times, than to hold our ground. And it's understandable that we may fatigue from time to time, but staying the course is going to determine our child's future. So it's important to hold our ground. Celebrating your child's success. When our children succeed, it is a reflection on their abilities and our determination. Therefore, it is important to celebrate the small gains and bigger achievements. In summary, we need to have clear expectations for our children, being careful to make sure that they are grounded in reality, not overestimating or underestimating our child's abilities. Expectations are the launching pad for our children's success. Now, it all begins with our mindset, and getting familiar with the person-centered approach or thinking can really help us stay focused and determined. So let's go on to our next slide. And here, as we said, person-centered thinking is about our mindset. It is actually a set of principles and core competencies that is the foundation for person-centered planning. We know that person-centered planning, on the other hand, is a guided process for learning how someone wants to live at home, at work, or in the community, and then developing a plan, to help make it happen. Now, person-centered thinking, the tools provided can help with practical strategies for gathering meaningful information, and they can facilitate conversations about goal setting, problem solving, and action planning. And this process ensures that focus remains on the perspectives of individuals affected by the issue or the outcome. And I really resonated with what Angela Amado had to say about the person-centered approach, which is shifting our thinking about people with developmental disabilities from their deficits to appreciating what they have is at the core of person-centered thinking. This person, Angela Amado, has been working on implementing person-centered approaches for people with developmental disabilities for at least 20 years. And she explains how a person-centered approach differs, from the familiar system-centered approach. In the system-centered approach, you see someone as a client and focus on their deficits and their needs, which lead you to certain conclusions as to what kind of treatment the client needs or what kind of support the client needs. Now, in a person-centered approach, we see someone as a person first, not someone who is defined by their disability. By understanding who this person is, we see the person in terms of the person's capacities. We appreciate the person for what the person can do, from the gifts that the person has, and how the person can contribute to others. And this really shifts thinking to how we can help the person have as normal a life as possible. And this does not mean ignoring the disability, but rather supporting it in as normal a way as possible. The focus is supporting the personhood as much as possible. And this takes us to the next slide, which we see what is important to and for. So I had mentioned that in person-centered thinking, there's tools that provide practical strategies for gathering meaningful information and facilitating conversations about goal setting, problem solving, and action planning. One of the skills needed in person-centered thinking is sorting important to and important for. So what's important to them and what's important for them, and finding the balance between them. And this is what we have here. This is page 14 of our family care notebook, which I'm going to be showing you how to access in a moment. So just to do a little brief, what is important to a person includes only what the people are saying with their words or with their behavior. Now, remember that many people have lived in circumstances where they were expected to say what others wanted them to say, where people are saying what they think they want to hear. So that's why we have to rely on listening to their behavior. What is it that they like, that they want? What makes them happy? What makes them fulfilled? And then the other one is important for. What is important for people includes those things that we need to keep in mind for people regarding issues of health, of safety, what others see as important for the person to be valued, to be a valued member of their community. And then there's the balance. the idea of the balance between what is important to and what is important for the person is rooted in, the human condition, where none of us have a life where we have everything that is important to us, and none of us usually pay attention or perfect attention to everything that is important for us. So we all strive for a balance between them, and learning what is important and what is important for has to be done before you can even find that balance. Everyone finds that, sometimes there's even conflict between those two from time to time. So having people sit down, stop and think about the answers to this will help them determine, what really is important to them and important for them. So that's why we have these tools, for them to question and really think, about what is important to them. So we're going to show you on the next slide how you can access the Family Care Notebook. You see here that we have the 3 versions for you to download in Spanish, Vietnamese, and English. And if you want to know more about the notebook, you can actually also access our videos. So if you're going to be getting these slides soon, and you can access them through them, or you can also go to our website and access them there. But it's really going to give you a good view, a preview of how it looks like and how you can start, having those conversations, even if your child is fairly young. Now, all of this is very closely tied to the concept of self-determination. So let's have Alyssa talk about what is self-determination.
Okay, thank you, Luisa. We really appreciate all those insights. So what is self-determination? It's choice-making, it's decision-making, it's learning how to problem solve, it's believing you can control your own path in your own life. So all those self words that you may have heard and will certainly be hearing as your child grows: self-regulation, self-evaluation, self-observation, self-instruction, self-awareness, a huge one, self-knowledge, self-esteem, self-advocacy. Even when your little ones are still babies, it's essential to recognize that all these self-hyphenated words, they're all connected, and they're kind of under this umbrella term of self-determination. Making your own choices, setting your own goals, learning to solve problems effectively, taking control and responsibility for your life. Once you build one of these skills, you're helping to build all of them. And they fall under the umbrella of self-determination, as I said. So you may be thinking, how in the world do you expect my 2-year-old or my 4-year-old to be self-determined and learn self-determination skills? So let's take a look at a couple of moms who talk about that.
Welcome to this video edition of Informing Families Building Trust. Today we're going to talk about something that we really don't talk about often enough. That's the importance of fostering self-determination in younger children.
Cookies are really nice, yes.
Cookies, Mama? When I started to get involved with other families with children with special needs, I realized we need to start early. The earlier we start, the better. It will be easier for her to learn when she's young than to wait until she's a teenager or a young adult to learn about independence and self-determination and how the world works.
As I think many parents do, you just want to keep them safe and not let anything happen. And I was an overprotective parent to begin with my daughter, and this amplified it. And so by the time he started his preschool Birth to 3 program, I couldn't get the things I wanted in place in the classroom. So I said, well, then I'm going to sit here because I'm afraid. And so there was an evolution that, becoming empowered and educated and knowing what I needed to do to advocate for him, it also helped reduce the fear. But he's entirely capable of learning if we make a little extra effort. And so that's been eye-opening for me, that he just learns differently and I have to try differently.
I think what she's learning right now is to be independent, to do things on her own, and to have responsibility about the things like within the house. For example, like when we are gonna have dinner, she's the one who sets the table. Sometimes she needs cues to go to do it, but she enjoys doing that.
Can you give Mommy a hug? She's here. giving him a voice was very, very important, and having him be able to communicate his wants and needs. And I don't know that I thought of that as self-advocacy as much as just you've got to be able to communicate your wants and needs, and especially for a child with autism to at 7 find that voice and be able to communicate and try to negotiate. I think is pretty impressive and telling to all the supports he's had around him.
Free choice.
Free toys.
The free choice are go to the playground. The more the things that she likes that she could do, she will be, the happier she will be. So that's the most important part, that she could be an independent person, that she can have her own life and try to make decisions on her own with some support.
There will come a point where, Zach's gonna wanna decide what's happening. And as I'm involved with advocacy around high school special education transition, we're talking about age 14, this age where we wanna start talking about employment, and that's 7 years away, and he's definitely got to be part of that conversation, because that's
So sorry that cut off a little bit, but I think she was just saying, so that's why we need to start teaching self-advocacy and self-determination skills at an early age. So what does self-determination in the early years look like? Next slide, please.
Welcome to the
Whoops, there we go. So it's important for all our children to be self-determined. It's important for us to be self-determined, but even more so for our kiddos with disabilities. So we want to begin by providing choice as early as possible. And they actually, as early as infancy, are making choices when they point at objects, when they acquire different language, when they decide when they're going to acquire different words, when they choose between an apple and an orange. They're making choices. And as parents, we want to support those choices as much as possible. Self-awareness can begin as early as 15 or 18 months. They differentiate between themselves and others at this point. So they will be making their own choices and decisions and figuring out what interests them and what doesn't interest them, usually with help from adults. And they'll have more help from adults earlier in their life. They may continue to have a lot of help from adults, whether it be parents or caregivers, as they grow. But that doesn't mean that they don't have their own interest and they don't want to make their own choices. So it's important for us to encourage our child's interests relating to activities, people they want to spend time with, any kind of daily living that they might do, and give them the opportunities to become a self-determined individual. And I know that Louisa mentioned this, but support high expectations and encourage that independent functioning, the development of abilities and the interacting with others. Because as I said, all those selves, the self-awareness, the self-knowledge, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-respect, they're all connected. And when you build that one skill, you're building them all. So how do we start building the skills of our little ones? So children learn by doing. I think we all know this, right? But when you encourage our little ones to make their own developmentally appropriate choices, you're helping them to learn by doing. So give them chores around the house. You saw in the video that little girl was setting the table. Toddlers can do that. They can pick up after themselves. They can pull the blankets up on their bed and make their bed in the morning. Give them skills that they can do, that then they can feel proud of, that they are contributing to the household chores. Give them that opportunity to demonstrate their competence and know that their contribution is valuable and valued. Also important to step back and let your child take risks, make decisions on their own, solve problems on their own. We all learn by trying and failing. And, evidence will show that you learn more when you fail than when you succeed at something, because we learn from making mistakes. We need to do things again, and we need to practice. So we want to focus on our children's strengths and provide them with the opportunities to develop these strengths, and support them and scaffold them when we recognize weaknesses. Something that is always good to remember is to avoid overpraising, because continually telling your child that he or she is doing a fantastic job, great job, It gives your child the message that there's no longer any need to really push themselves and to strive for something. And also, when something becomes frustrating, they might give up and not try and do it at all because they can't do a good job. They're not going to get that praise. So kind of remember to keep that in the back of your mind if you can, because confidence comes from doing and trying and failing and doing again. Enveloping all of this is to make it clear that your love is unconditional. Let them know that you love them regardless of their failures or their bad decisions. The hobbies and interests that children develop over time will help them develop skills and help them learn about themselves. So in early childhood, these skills, I don't need to read the slide, but, hearing stories, reading stories, playing games, solving puzzles, doing chores, playing with peers, all these things help them to learn about themselves. It's also good to think about life skills as 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Now, these are necessary skills for mostly all jobs, if you think about it, and really interactions with people in general. When do they start developing these skills? Well, pretty early on. Communication, you can think of that as self-advocacy. That's speaking up for what they want. They may not always get what they want, which is also good to learn as well from an early age. That collaboration, you may be familiar with the stages of play, where first they play by themselves, and then they play side by side, and then they play together. Well, that collaborative skill, the ability to collaborate with peers or a group, that's a 21st century skill as far as any educator is concerned. That is something that is definitely going to be needed when you interact in both a work world and your social world. The critical thinking piece when they're younger kind of comes in with playing games or solving puzzles. It's having to really focus on something and figure out next steps. Critical thinking, it's an essential skill. And creativity, of course, that imaginative play, hearing stories, reading, role playing, that all helps build the foundation for creativity in adult life, which can take many, many, many forms. So remembering those 4 C's, the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity, is essential in early childhood. Now, not to harp on this too much, but as you go through, as they grow, they're going to be developing different hobbies and different interests in elementary school and in middle school and in high school, and things start to change a bit. Maybe I think it's really hard to not have this in their world, the social media, the devices that they're going to have. They might start joining youth organizations and volunteer experiences. Music might come into play, sports, extracurricular activities. These are all things that are going to help them know themselves better and decide who they want to be and when they want to be who they want to be. And in high school, next slides, please. They've already started to pull away a bit more. Socialization becomes way more important. Youth, recreational music, career technical classes, work experience. They may begin to start having internships or small jobs. Whatever it might be, these are all going to develop their interests. And, I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's good to just kind of have it in your mindset. The next slide, I know, is a lot of words and it's a lot on a page, but I just want to introduce you to the California Transition Alliance, which is an organization in California with folks who work tirelessly toward everything that has to do with transition to adulthood. And this chart that they created brings you from transition from cradle to adulthood with 4 different categories and 5 different stages of life. So again, you will be getting this handout and you can click on it. You can visit California Transition Alliance. That's the live link down in the bottom left-hand corner when you get the PDF of the slides. But we just kind of, first, we thank California Transition Alliance for sharing this work with us. But let's just take a closer look at those first 2 columns. which are birth to preschool and pre-K to grade 3. So under the self-advocate and youth leadership skills, in that birth to preschool, we're talking about expressing wants and needs, communicating with family and friends, developing social and interpersonal skills. And then in the pre-K to 3, they're going to be expressing more choices and preferences, developing a sense of self-respect, especially if you've given them that foundation of whether to pick that apple or that orange and making their correct choice for themselves. They're starting to build teamwork skills more, that collaboration that we talked about before, and taking responsibility for themselves. Also, not a bad idea to learn about their disability at this point in time, because when they're older, you want them to be able to explain their disability to people, because that is the way they're going to be able to ask for help when they need it. And that's how they're going to be able to be successful. So in the next section is sort of talks about the family role, the parent, the ally, the mentor, the advocate, whatever the support system might be. And here we have it again, praise accomplishments, but not too much. And set those expectations high. I'm not going to say that enough. We love to say that. The reading, the communicating and listening, the giving choices, the encouraging creativity, all in that younger age, that 0 to 3 or 4. And then the pre-K to grade 3, encouraging those friendships, facilitating relationships. Those play dates are really kind of essential and important if you can figure out a way to make that happen. Assigning chores, like the setting of the table or making their bed. And encouraging interests, maybe even joining some recreational or youth activities, organizations, maybe sports. Again, learning about their disability and maybe others' disabilities as well. And starting to participate in their IEPs, even if they just come for a little bit and say, I like math, and then leave. They're getting used to attending a meeting where everyone is talking about them. So there's that quote, nothing about us without us. It's a kind of the cry of the disability rights movement, and it remains true today as it was in the 70s, I think, when it was coined. The next section talks about learning and school-based experiences. So birth to preschool, you're encouraging all those skills, right? Social skills, language skills, interpersonal skills. You're helping them to explore the environment and encouraging that social emotional learning. Thank goodness more and more schools have recognized that SEL, social emotional learning, is so important. So it still is in there at pre-K to grade 3. Academic standards start creeping in. Way back in the Stone Age when I was in kindergarten, there weren't so many academic standards. Even when my 28-year-old was in kindergarten, there weren't so many. Now there are. Kindergarten, everything has been a little amped up. But that's the way it is, and that's the system we're in. The pre-employment skills of communication and collaboration again, right? Teamwork, learning how to solve problems together. And even going to a career fair or shadowing a parent at work. Really not too young to start doing that, to start having them think about what it is they might have an interest in. And of course, the career development. And I know it sounds really funny at this point to think about a career when you have a 3-year-old, but it's the foundation of allowing them to observe people at work, encouraging developing skills and interest, and talking to your child about work, because work can help promote a sense of well-being and confidence, and you feel like you're being a contributing member to society. Now, this doesn't mean that it has to be paid work, but paid work is nice too, because that makes them feel like they're actually of worth. Interest inventories and surveys can start being given at pre-K to grade 3. I know of some districts in California where they're starting self-advocacy curriculums in 2nd grade. I applaud that, and I hope that every district in California is going to be doing it within the next decade. Things move a little slowly, but it would be nice. Taking tours of local businesses at this age could be a possibility. Having a mentor or a role model, maybe a middle schooler or a sibling, and volunteering at this point in time. Maybe going to an assisted living facility, or meeting with people in a park just to go for a walk with someone with their dog. Something to help them feel like I can contribute. And you might even consider a first small job. So I think that we've developed, as we conclude, that self-determination skills are built over time. They're learned over time. And if we take the opportunities to teach a little, let go a little, and give little ones the opportunity to decide and do things for themselves, given their capabilities, they will develop a foundation of self-confidence, self-respect, self-reliance, all the selves. And let me leave you with this, that a way to avoid worrying about the future, and I think that Susanna said this in the beginning, is to plan for the future. So it's not so overwhelming when it gets there. So not right now, but in your own time, you can visit the Connections California site. I did put the link in the chat earlier, but you can also just go to the PHP website and find it on your own and explore a bit about what's coming down the pike to prepare yourself, and teach self-determination skills early and often, and keep those expectations high. Just to let you know that in this PowerPoint, when you get the PDF, you will have resources. They're live links. Please look through them at your leisure. I particularly like all the book selections because they're broken down into topics: goal setting, self-regulation, self-awareness, self-management, decision-making. And these you can take all the time you want to go over with your little one, and then cuddle up and read, which is always so important. So we're happy to take questions now if you'd like, and I am going to drop into the chat a evaluation. It's 3 questions long. If you wouldn't mind just taking just a minute and filling it out, that would be wonderful. It helps us to continue to bring quality programming to viewers like you. So here we go. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to either put them in the chat, or Susanna, do you think maybe we can unmute folks since we're a small group, or what do you think?
Doing so now, everybody has access to
Wonderful.
to talk. Yeah.
Okay, and I am dropping the chat.
So. Oh, sorry. I think I pressed a double for some folks. Okay, should be open. Should be open to all.
Everybody just might be stunned.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in, but a lot of good stuff when you have a little one and you're in that search mode, right? Yeah.
Did you have anything to say, Hannah? It looked like you were about to say something.
Oh, I was just agreeing with Susanna. I loved how with the presentation you wove through things that we can do in early childhood to help encourage independence in our children. And sometimes that's tough as a parent of a child with a disability, but it's really helpful. My son's now 20, and yeah, there's definitely things I wish we had known to do when he was a little bit younger, but when you know better, you do better. And I loved all the way the presentation wove together so many different concepts about parenting and parenting a child with a disability. So yeah, it was great.
Thanks. Well, okay, we don't need to stay on necessarily. But if do you have anything else coming up, Susanna, that you want to let the community know?
Yeah, of course.
While we have a captive audience.
Yes, I'll send it in with the slides too, but we do have next Wednesday a presentation from Susan Kelsey, who's a play therapist. I think it's going to be a good one. It's play therapy for young children with strong emotions. So she's going to talk about some tools and some play strategies that can help that. And it's under our first 5 programs. So we'll have a lot of interventionists, professionals, childcare center folks join us. So it's a great opportunity to kind of talk about the parent side and also the teacher side, right? Like what our teachers also, the input that they have with our kids in their centers or in their classrooms. So I'll share that with you. Yeah, 10 a.m. Wednesday the 24th. That's what we have coming up for this month. Yeah, I'll put the link in the chat here for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Susanna. And yes, the recording should be posted, I'd say, in, let's give us a month. There's a long queue of many recordings that need to be posted, but it will go up. And I don't know, Louisa, where do you think it might live?
I think planning.
Yeah, the
Nutrition
planning.
planning.
So on the Connections California pages, there are 5 topic areas, and one of them is planning for transition teens and tweens. Maybe we should add toddlers to the list, really, because we're all big proponents in starting all this early. But that you might not think intuitively to look for it there, but that's where it'll be.
And I'm sure it could also be in the section of early intervention. You know,
Yeah, if you would like us
Yeah.
to include it there, Susanna, yeah.
We
Okay.
could do that as well. Yeah.
can do that.
First.
Okay, we
There's
do
a question. Yeah,
have a
in the
question,
chat.
yeah. So I have a 4th grader in Gen Ed with aid support. Can you share a bit of insight about fading aids? Does anybody want to take that, or should I start?
I'll just make a comment. Maybe I've encountered this personally. Sometimes our aides are very well intentioned and may give our kids too much assistance. And one thing that we've found helpful in our IEPs when we've been hoping to fade some of those prompts is asking for an aide to maybe offer more indirect nonverbal prompts. That's like a less what's the word I'm looking for? That's, a step down from like a, very direct verbal, like so-and-so do this. So that's one way you could talk about fading, or, asking for them to pause maybe for a few seconds after when they initially give an instruction, and then see if the child, it just takes some of our kids, time to process the instructions they're being given. I know with my son, I sometimes can just like see the wheels turning in his head as he's trying to process what I've asked him to do. So even just asking an aide to wait a few extra seconds, which can sometimes feel like a long time for them, but giving the child a little more time to process and respond. But
Yeah. And I don't know if your child in particular responds to visual aids, but having the aid and your child together make a chart or a visual aid about a particular task, so that then maybe they become more familiar with looking to their chart to help them than looking for the person to give them either an auditory cue or a tactile cue or any kind of thing. They're looking to something that they have created with their aid, so they have buy-in, but that can stay laminated, taped onto their desk, kept in a little notebook, maybe if there are, there could be 6 or 8, visual representations of things. So that's just a thought.
And just maybe another thought towards the IEP planning. It's common that we get our aid kind of suddenly taken away, or the suggestion of not needing the aid, and it comes to a surprise sometimes. So talking about the plan is also important with your IEP teams. What is the plan for fading away the aid support that's needed, and when and why, right? What are the goals? And then it won't come to a surprise, as a surprise, and it can be better planned too. But that's a great example of looking ahead, right? And having the end in mind.
Okay. Well, by the clock on the screen, we
Yep.
have a minute left. Does PHP offer workshops on how to teach parents how to make visual aids?
That might be a good one.
Yeah, we'll have to take
Yeah.
that up with the program managers.
That's right. That might be a good one. We do often let you know about the Inclusion Collaborative with Santa Clara County Office of Education. They can make visual aids for you. They will listen to what you're needing, and they have a big library of visual aids that they're happy to share that, you know, support inclusion. So, you know, just call them. I can put the link here too, or send it with the slides too. They used to have an open center where I know teachers can use it now. I'm not sure if they're after COVID open for parents as well, but it was a maker space where you can go there and create your visuals and laminate them, and they would support you. But they are supporting with that. They have a lot of resources and links online where you can free, you know, download some pictures and ideas with steps for different kinds of visual aids, visual schedules, communication boards, all kinds of visuals. So I think I have an e-packet somewhere. So if you want to email me, Susanna@php.com, I can share those links of some online visual pages where you can find some.